Hello everyone and welcome back to the Magnus Invitational. We are back at day 4 round 2 with a very nice game from between Ding Liren and Fabiano Caruana. It's game 3 of their match. The first 2 games between them have been drawn, and this one it's just the best. I do think it's the best game of day 4. That game between Nepo and Denville was also really crazy with that knight sacrifice on f7, but I don't know. I'll let you decide. I prefer this one. And when I say the best game, I don't mean the most precise game or the most well-played game. I just mean the most enjoyable one to watch. We'll see what you guys have to say. So without further ado, Ding opens with knight to f3 against Fabi. Fabi goes for d5, very nice, my favorite reply to the Reti. We have g3, g6, and now bishop to g2. We have bishop to g7 and d4 now. Just establishing some control in the center, knight f6 and c4 now, basically transposing into the Neo-Gruenfeld. We have c6 and we have c captures on d5, c captures and knight to c3, so just normal development. We have castles and knight to e5, grabbing hold of that very nice outpost on e5. We have e6 by Fabi and bishop to g5 now. We have h6 and bishop back to f4, now with maybe ideas of queen d2 going after that h6 pawn. So first knight f to d7, now suggesting some trades on e5. We have castles by Ding, and here Fabi trades. We have knight captures, bishop captures, and d captures. And now knight to c6, just going after the pawn, and Ding replies with queen to d2. He offers this pawn for the h6 pawn, which Fabi defends, and it's interesting, both of them played the position very quickly. Ding even has had this position at one point against Anton Korobov in 2017. He was able to win that game with f4, but here Ding goes for rook a to d1, and it is a new move in the position. So Fabi continues with b6. He wants to get his bishop over to this diagonal. We have f4 by Ding, and now bishop to a6. We have rook to f3, so now you can move the e pawn, and now rook to c8 by Fabi, just getting the rook to the open c file, and now g4, preparing to bust open the position with f5. And here Fabi finds a very interesting idea on how to prevent this. He plays queen to h4. And now, okay, f5 will obviously be met with queen captures on g4. Not much to consider there. So first Ding defends it with rook to g3, and here comes the move that really gets this game going. Here Fabi played h5, which is really just interesting and very dangerous. As for example, if Ding captures after queen captures, all sorts of madness can happen here. For example, rook h3. Queen to f5, and now e4, going after the queen here, and after this is captured, now just knight captures here, and it's just a really crazy position where black can easily go wrong. White is much better here. For example, a nice tricky variation, if rook here, you have to be careful of some like captures, and now just knight to g3, attacking the queen and winning the knight on c6. So it is very crazy, but Ding, instead of capturing, you don't want to overcalculate, you don't have all that much time, plays g5, and he traps Fabi's queen on h4. So, okay, the queen is trapped, but there's no real way to further attack the queen. For example, if you could get this knight over to, let's say, f3, that would work, but that's easier said than done, and you would require way too many moves, and you don't really have any necessary squares required to do that. Plus, also, Fabi gets some moves in. So rook f to d8 by Fabi, and now Ding just attacks the queen. Rook h3, queen g4, and now rook back to g3. Fabi repeats, queen to h4. If you go here, bishop h3 just traps the queen. So Fabi has to repeat, queen h4. He says, okay, I'm down with a draw by repetition with the black pieces. But Ding plays rook to f1. And what's the idea here? First, I thought Ding was probably planning to go something like rook f3, then this rook here, and then this rook there. Maybe. But not really. Ding had something else in mind. Fabi went for knight to e7. He wants to get his knight to f5 to challenge the rook and kick it away from there. But now Ding plays the most unexpected move of all. He plays f5. And here it just proves what kind of player Ding is. This is just complete madness. And he frees the f4 square for the rook. That's the real threat behind rook to f1. And now rook to f4 will come with an attack against the queen. So if you want, this is one of the most complicated positions you've ever seen. If you want, pause the video here and just think about the position. You don't have to look for any moves. You can if you want, but it's just a good position to study. If you pause the video for a few seconds or minutes or even more. So for those of you who just, pondered on the position and, just consider lots of stuff, congratulations on doing that. And if you've considered moves like knight captures on f5, which is the only good move for black here, then also congratulations on that. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, Fabi played g captures on f5, and it is a bit different. But to understand why it doesn't work, first we're going to have to check out what happens if knight captures here. Point is that after rook to f4 attacking the queen, you have d4. This is the crucial idea, because now if you capture the queen, which is of course what everyone wants to do, the problem is black has captures on c3, opens up a double attack on the queen, and after the queen moves, now you have rook to d2, further kicking away the queen, and now just c2, and you get your queen back with a winning position for black. So what you would have to do after d4, you cannot go for the queen right away. You have to play, you have to move the knight, but not to b1. You have to move it to d5, and this is also very important. The knight from there needs to guard the rook on f4, because otherwise, if for example you go knight b1, let's just show that. If knight b1, then you have rook to c2. Getting the queen away from this rook. So now you either allow the black queen to escape, which will be much better for black, or you go for trades here, and after captures, now this knight from f5 finally picks up the rook on h4, and now black is just better. So this was the point of the knight to f5 move. So like I said, after this d4 move, you cannot go here. You have to go to d5, and then everything just happens. Here you get knight captures on g3, rook captures on h4, we have knight captures on e2 with check, king f2, and now finally finishing up with e captures on d5. We get this position where it's a queen, bishop, and rook against two rooks, bishop, and knight with a pass pawn already on d4. So it would be complete madness. However, Fabi played g captures on f5, pretty much considering the exact same motives, but that knight on f5 is crucial. So here Ding played rook to f4 as planned, and now d4, continuing in the same fashion, but now Ding has a knight to b1, and now rook to c2 no longer works, that hidden resource that we were talking about, as there is no knight on f5, because once the rook picks up the queen, you don't have knight to recapture on h4. So here Fabi had to give up the queen for the rook. We have queen captures on f4, and now just knight to g6, going after the queen, queen d2, and now winning the e5 pawn. And okay, it's not over yet. Fabi does have a lot of pressure going on here with these rooks controlling c and d file, the bishop slicing over here, the knight on an excellent central outpost, and there is the pawn on d4. So rook to a3 immediately by Ding, going after the bishop. We have bishop to b5, and now captures on a7. Knight to g4 by Fabi, and now knight to a3, getting the knight into the game. Bishop captures on e2. Here he wants to give up the bishop for the sneaky rook c1 check. Bishop blocks, and now knight to e3, going after the bishop here, and now you finally have a passed pawn. So Ding not interested in giving Fabi all of this, so instead he goes h3, and now with the knight being challenged, if you will not have knight to e3 and at the end of this line, doesn't really work. So here instead d3, just defending the bishop here, but now Ding captures the knight with h captures, and now knight back to b1 will be important, as you need to cover the d2 square. For example, if rook to c2, you can go queen to e3, and the d2 square is nicely covered. So we have e5 by Fabi instead. He wants to start pushing his pawns here, and now queen to e3. We have rook to c5, defending the pawn here, and now knight to d2. And rook to d4 now. So still not letting anything slip. Fabi is continuing to play this game. We have rook to g3 by Ding, now with the idea of shifting the queen over to start attacking the king on the king side. And now rook to c1 check. We have king to h2 and now f4. We have queen to h4 and now g3 with check, and this is getting very uncomfortable for Ding's king. King h3, now luckily the bishop is guarding h1, but rook to d6, preventing the queen from reaching the h6 square, but now Ding just goes for bishop to d5. He wants to offer the bishop to get this queen h6 check, but then after this it's just over. Rook 8 check here, and you're getting checkmated. So instead, after this bishop to d5 move, we have rook to e6 by Fabi, still hoping that Ding will capture, and at least he will get his rook to h1 check, winning the queen. But Ding just finishes the game in style. Rook captures on f7 with check, king captures, and now queen to h7 with check. King to f8, and now of course it's never too late to blunder your game. Again, if you capture, rook to h1 will win you the queen, so hope none of you were considering capturing the rook. Here Ding played just queen to f5 check, and it was in this position that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, and Ding takes the lead in their match by winning the third game. So here, after the king moves, you just pick up the rook, and that's just it. Black does not have any counterplay. After rook h1 check, king here, and there is nothing more here, as the knight covers the f1 square, so there's no bishop f1, and that's just it. If you go f3 check, you could continue pushing, but then king captures g2, and there is no way for you to cross the dark squares, having only a light square bishop. So Fabi saw this, and after queen to f5, he resigned the game. So yeah, that's game 3 of their match. I do hope you enjoyed it, and I do think it was the best game of the day, but it was a close call between that and the first game between Nepo and MVL. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed that. We're continuing our coverage of the day 4, so stay tuned. I would like to thank David Chesluk, Mr. R, Leon Mushan, Shmuel Bashan, and Mark Magnier for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Magnus Invitational until it finishes. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.